The Summerside Chamber of Commerce and the West Prince Chamber of Commerce are hosting a conversation with the Honourable Minister Jamie Fox and the Honourable Minister Ernie Hudson. This morning we'd like to talk about some of the programs that have been developed and distributed within their ministries, and hear a little from them about what's going on in their constituencies and their communities during this challenging time. My name is Pam Scammon Montgomery, and I'm the president of the Greater Summerside Chamber of Commerce. And this morning, I have with me, as I'd said, Minister Jamie Fox and Minister Ernie Hudson. I'm going to start this morning's conversation with a brief bio on both ministers, and I'm going to read it, so you'll have to forgive me. I'll start with Minister Hudson. Ernie Hudson, a graduate of the Nova Scotia Agricultural College and the University of Guelph, worked in West Prince for a number of years with the Department of Agriculture and operated a dairy farm in Cascampec for 27 years. He has worked as a constituency manager for Egmont MP, Honourable Gail Shea, as Chief of Staff in the Opposition Office. He previously served as steward and trustee of the O'Leary United Church and as the board member of the Reverend W.J. Phillip Residence, a community care facility in Alberton. He's also past chair of the West Prince Health Board. Ernie and his wife Marilyn live in Fortune Cove. They have 2 adult daughters and 3 grandchildren. Good morning, Minister Hudson.
Good morning, Pam.
Minister Jamie Fox. Jamie Fox served in the military and as local law enforcement officer on Prince Edward Island. He's also owned and operated small businesses in both PEI and New Brunswick. Jamie is a community volunteer and an active supporter of school breakfast programs in his district of Borden-Kinkora. Since being elected in 2015, Jamie has served on the Standing Committee on Agriculture and Fisheries and the Standing Committee on Infrastructure and Energy. Following re-election in 2019, he was appointed Minister of Fisheries and Communities. He lives in North Carleton with his wife Deborah and their 3 sons, Jonathan, Joey, and Jacob. Good morning, Minister Fox.
Good morning.
If we'd like to start with Minister Hudson, talk about some of the programs that your ministries developed and distributed, and some general comments on what's going on, and then we'll flip over to Minister Fox, and feel free to chime in if you guys know each other well enough that if there's things going on that relate or other fun things you'd like to talk about.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Pam, and good morning, everyone. It has been certainly a very challenging 2.5 months. It's hard to believe that it was just, approximately 3 months ago. I believe the date was February 21st that the West Prince Chamber hosted their gala up at Mill River, and at which time I had the pleasure to be the guest speaker at the gala. But just how much things have changed over that time period. And I know it's the pandemic, COVID-19, it has impacted islanders right from tip to tip in so many different ways. Just on a personal note, one of the things when we were looking at social distancing, but self-isolation and basically staying within our family units, it was from my, and like I say, to give a little bit of a personal perspective to it, the thing that impacted me to a large extent was just not being able to hang out with the grandchildren, to be honest with you. It's been a real realization, I think, if you can put a positive spin on it at all, is just that it makes us step back, realize what really is important in our day-to-day lives. And when those important aspects are taken away for the situation, or for whatever situation, but certainly what we have been dealing with, it does make us appreciate what we had before and what we're able to move forward to once again. With regard to my department, social development and housing, one thing I would say is that the way that the department has operated has changed to some extent. Certainly, there was a depopulation of government offices. A number of my staff right across the province were working from home. I would have to say, though, that although that the manner in which the service or delivery of programs changed, the delivery of those programs were still there. Looking at the different funding that we have put in place through my department, one of the first things was an announcement of 500,000, and that was allocated 250,000 went to the United Way of Prince Edward Island, and that was to top up the United Way Fund, their Compassion Fund. In addition to that, there was 100,000 went to food banks, the PEI food banks, and 100,000 to the Salvation Army, and that was for their home heating program in conjunction with food program. We did then have 50,000 that was earmarked as a contingency fund, and that was basically just if there were specific issues, I would say, that come up or challenges that come up, that we were able to have that 50,000 as a sleeve to work with. And one of the things that we did provide out of that 50,000 was 10,000 to the Community Foundation of Prince Edward Island, and a number of you may have heard about, and we call tablets for seniors. And going back to what I had said there originally, just the personal note of not being able to see family members, that was one of the initiatives, the Tablets for Seniors, that enabled families to be able to stay in contact with their loved ones that were in long-term care, community care facilities at a time when, and they continue to be closed to the public, but at the very least to be able to provide that opportunity to connect with your loved ones that are in long-term care, community care facilities. The last one that I'll touch base on briefly is the temporary rental assistance benefit. And that was with the realization that with individuals being laid off, with a decrease in income, that it was going to indeed impact the ability to be able to meet various commitments, but certainly rental or lease payments. And we did not want and do not want to see any of the most vulnerable or any individuals in a position once we move forward to be seeing that, well, I've got X number of hundreds or thousands of dollars in lease arrears. Where am I going to come up with for money on this? So we did put in place, as I mentioned, the temporary or the TRAB for rental assistance, and the uptake on it has been quite substantial. As of, I believe it was Friday of last week, there had been 1,821 applications come in on that program. So that's sort of it in a nutshell from myself, Pam, and again, thank you for the invite.
You're very welcome. It's so great to hear from you guys and hear what's going on in other parts of the island, and delivery of the programs from the horse's mouth. We have a couple of questions for you, Minister Hudson, that were submitted from some of our members and some of the community. The first one, I think you have a copy of them. I'll just go through them quickly. The first one is, are you seeing an increased need for subsidized housing because of job loss or income reduction?
Well, no, go ahead. I'm sorry, Pam. Yeah.
If no, do you see an increase? And would the province be able to accommodate an increase in the need for subsidized housing?
Well, looking back to pre-COVID-19, certainly one of the things that was front and center right across the province was just the low, extremely low vacancy rate, and the difficulty that individuals and families had with regard to obtaining apartments, places to make sure that they had a roof over their head.
Yes.
We do have in the department an emergency shelter line. And over this period of COVID-19, to be quite frank, there has not been a lot of calls coming into that line. With that, certainly, and again, going to pre-COVID, there were a number of housing initiatives that we had put in place. There was an affordable housing development program. In the capital budget last fall, we had over 17 million that was earmarked for 100 additional units through the PEI Housing Corporation. So we will be moving forward on them. Our rental assistance programs, whether it was, for example, the mobile rental voucher, they are still in place and will be in place for those that are in need of core housing. It is going to be interesting as we move forward, just what impact that COVID-19 has on vacancy rates. You look at the impact without a doubt that it's having on tourism, and part of that is with regard to short-term rentals. I'm aware of different ones that previously had facilities that were going to be rented out on a short-term rental under various platforms. But rather than having them on that platform, that they are going to be moving to a longer term basis as far as rentals are concerned. So it's certainly something that we do have to be very aware of. The temporary resident or rental assistance benefit, we will have to certainly see what the demand is going forward. On that, initially when it was announced on a daily basis, there were numerous applications. Over the last week and a half, we have seen them starting to drop off as far as the numbers are concerned. But again, we're going to have to continuously monitor that, see what the needs are.
Awesome. Well, it's sometimes the challenges are overcome. If nothing, Islanders are supportive of each other, and it's nice to see those with short-term rentals consider other options throughout this time period. And the assistance through the TRAB program has certainly helped. Another question, the public consultation sessions for the newly proposed Residential Tenancy Act were canceled due to COVID-19. Is there a plan to hold these sessions in the near future, or is the province only accepting written submissions?
Good question, Pam, certainly. Yes, there were consultations that had started. Presently, the new Tenancy Act, I had the pleasure to be able to attend a public consultation up in Alberton pre-COVID-19. The original intent, and I should add as well, that this is under Minister Trevor's department. Actually, it is not under mine. But having said that, the original intent was to move through the consultation process over the winter months with the anticipation that the new Tenancy Act would have been tabled in the legislature this spring. Obviously, that is not going to happen at this point in time. But once we get into a position that the consultations will be able to continue, as I understand, yes, written submissions still are being accepted. That would have to be certainly verified with Minister Trivers, but that is my understanding. But I think that we want to be able to, before we bring it forward to the legislature, to make sure that in various forms or various avenues, that ones that want to have their voice heard, their opinion, comments made, their suggestions, that they have the absolute opportunity to do that.
Awesome. That's important. Which of Minister Trivers does it fall under? It doesn't fall under education?
It actually does. IRAC is under education, early learning. So it, yeah, it does fall under Minister Trivers.
I can add
Uh,
to that, Pam.
sure.
Back a number of years ago, they looked at IRAC to see where the less likelihood of any conflict would be with the way the department structure was set up within government.
Mm-hmm.
And they felt that with IRAC being under education, there was almost a nil chance of anything being brought before IRAC that would have an impact on the education system. So that's where that decision came from back years and years and years ago.
Oh.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jamie, because it is an excellent point. You just look at the fact that my department, the PEI Housing Corporation, falls under my department, and it is the largest landlord on in Prince Edward Island. So there would be always that potential of a conflict, or at the very least a perceived conflict of interest if IRAC and the Rental of Residential Properties Act had fallen under my department. So thanks, Jamie, for that.
Thank you. One more question, Minister Hudson. Is the Special Committee on Family Violence Protection that was announced early April still meeting on a regular basis? And are the members of that committee still the same?
Yes, we still are meeting. Actually, as soon as I get off this Zoom call, I am going to the next meeting of it.
Awesome. And that's been working well?
It has certainly been working very well. You look at the individuals that are on the committee, and it was one of the concerns. You look at the number of concerns that resulted from COVID-19, but we certainly wanted to make sure that we're looking at all of the different challenges that islanders during this time would be having. And one of those was just with regard to the potential for an increase in instances of family or domestic violence, families under additional stress and the like. So it has worked, in my opinion, and I think in the opinion of all of the members on the committee, very well. And you know, at the end of the day, we want to work with islanders. It's one of the things I think too, when you see the response to COVID-19, it hasn't been just a government, whether federal or provincial government response, but just the way that islanders have come together to help out ones that are in need. You look at island producers helping islanders, for example, is one of the examples that I'd put forward there. You had islanders helping islanders, like the directory, that if an individual was in need, that they couldn't get out for groceries, that they couldn't get out for medications, that it was there that for, you know, whether it was a neighbor or somebody in the community, that they could reach out to help them out with things along that line.
That's awesome. One last question. Where is it? I should put my own glasses on here. The province purchased 150 additional licenses for the Positive Parenting Program, so more islanders can access the program free of charge online. What has the uptake been on these additional licenses?
The uptake, Pam, has been really good. Unfortunately, I don't have the figures in front of me, but if going by memory here, so don't hold me to these exactly, but with the additional licenses, I think pre-COVID-19, that the amount that the Triple P program was being utilized, that it was a relatively low number. It has increased by probably 400 to 500%, if my memory serves me right. So it has been a very good, a great initiative that there has been good uptake on.
That's fantastic. It's good to hear these things. That's the end of the questions that were submitted, Minister Hudson, and I don't see any online, I don't think. None of our viewers or members have contributed. Is there anything else you'd like to add from your perspective on what's going on and what's going on in your region?
Yeah, the only thing that I would add there, Pam, is just that you know, we're not out of the woods yet. I think that we're a little closer to the edge of it, but that we do as a government and in conjunction with islanders and in conjunction with our federal counterparts as well, that we do have to be ready to react if and when we see that there is a need there. And again, if there's any of the departments in government that deals and has to be there for our most vulnerable, it is certainly social development and housing. So we will continue to be there. The last thing that I would like to say is just with regard to give a shout out to my directors, to my staff. It has been challenging without a doubt. Shout out to them for the great work that they have done, and also to essential workers and our NGOs right across the board. They have had challenges, they've been under stress without a doubt, and just to give my appreciation, state my appreciation to all of them.
Awesome, thank you. I'm sure they appreciate that. And so nice to hear. There is a question on our question box. I'm gonna maybe throw this open to both of you because I'm not sure where it falls. Is there any updates with electricity rates going off peak more often? Not sure I necessarily understand. Have electricity rates been going off peak?
Not that I'm aware of. I know that speaking with Minister Myers, they are looking at, he is looking at the Energy Act and how it affects islanders. There has been some conversations between the City of Summerside and the Transportation Infrastructure and Energy and my department under Municipal Affairs. But I haven't heard anything beyond that, that there is some conversations going on. As far as ratepayers making any comments, I haven't heard
anything. Okay. This person asks with regard or includes with regards to COVID-19, other provinces have done this.
Unless you know something, Ernie, I personally don't.
No, I don't. I guess with that, I'm just trying to get my head around the question a little bit, Pam. Is it with regard to any, like a programming that provided assistance in the payment of electricity? Is that?
I'm thinking.
Yeah.
She hasn't provided that detail yet, but maybe she will as we go along. But for the interest in time, because I know everybody has busy days, I'm going to switch over to Minister Fox now and have him answer some questions about fisheries and communities. Although I think most of the questions that we have seen are geared towards fisheries. I actually have one from communities that came to me over the weekend that we can go through, but Minister Fox, if you'd like to talk about some of the benefits and programming that's happening and some of the stuff you're seeing in your region.
Sure, I'll lead off with what Ernie did there at the very first. I think some of the biggest challenges for me was having family around, of course, like Ernie says, the granddaughters and stuff like that. Sunday's a big family day for me, and we always enjoy having the kids and stuff at the house and people stopping in, and that's hard. It's difficult. The next thing is, everybody knows me, is I'm very much an out and about person. I don't stay in the office very much. So not being able to go to visit the different people around the province and the wharfs and the harbors and talking to groups and having briefings is challenging because I feel that more time that I can spend away from the office is the best for the industry. One thing, our staff is very easy to adapt, and we were able to move things into a home-based department very quickly. A lot of our aquaculture people and our fishery and then our municipal affairs people, they were very, very quick in the ability to move the office to the residents. So we actually didn't shut down operations to the scale of some departments had challenges. We didn't. And then, of course, with rural development, which falls under our department, the same thing, our staff is able to work from home very quickly and keep programs going. And maybe I'll explain a little bit. I have a very broad department. Under the fishery side of things, we are working with the provincial governments and the other provinces very closely, with the federal department, DFO, with Coast Guard on a daily basis, and then also industry. And then we're very sensitive to international and world markets. And Ernie would know this because, of course, the Honourable Gail Shea, used to be the federal minister of fisheries. So Ernie can understand that relationships that you need to build, not only here in this province, but outside the province. And you also have to always take into account First Nations. And that's something that I think we're moving ahead with on a very positive note, is the relationship between the department and our two First Nations peoples. These are groups that must be taken into the equation, and I enjoy doing that. Under municipal affairs, under communities, it's a little bit of a different context for us. It's we're in charge of 63 municipalities across the island. So all the mayors and all the councillors, we actually provide the governance to them and the structure to ensure that they're providing the proper services across the island to them 63 municipalities. So that can be challenging in making sure now under the Municipal Governments Act that they are all under the same guidelines and the same requirements. But municipalities were up to the challenge very, very easy. A lot of municipalities, it didn't affect. COVID-19 actually didn't affect because they provide very little services out there to their residents, just the way they're structured. But then you have the very large municipalities that were impacted by COVID-19. They were able to provide services to the residents and to the municipalities that they service, and our department works with them on a daily basis. Something else we have in our department is we also manage the Crown Corporation called the Rural Development Agency, which is a Crown Corporation that provides services across the island to nonprofit groups and municipalities. And it also does a lot of employment grants and programs to different groups that want to tap into that. So our staff was able to keep them programs rolling. They were able to work from home, and they were continually getting the people out there. So that's in a nutshell, that's how we were impacted. But besides that, things are good.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's a lot, and it's pretty diverse too.
Yeah, we have a very diverse department. It's not just centralized to PEI. It's quite a wide impact across the whole region in international markets and world markets. We have to be very cautious what I say and how we react to things.
That's awesome. Can you speak to some of the programs and supports that have been put in place? Either some of the federal or provincial programming to support fisheries, and what you know about some of the supports that have been put in place for maybe some of the municipalities, or how they've been able to access some of the supports.
Sure, Pam. Back about 8 weeks ago, I signaled to the Atlantic ministers, including Quebec, that we needed to start talking about the fishery. We're a federal regulated program when you talk about saltwater species. So we started these conference calls back, let's say it'd be 8 or 9 weeks ago, and then within a week of that, we brought in the federal minister. So something we've been doing as globally is we've been talking every week with not only industry, but also our provincial counterparts in the 5 maritime provinces, which one, of course, I'm including Quebec in that, and then also the federal minister. So we were able to very quickly gather information from industry. Our staff was pulling it together, and then we would have our weekly call with the provincial ministers and sort of figure out what the impacts of COVID-19 were to the fishery and aquaculture industry across the whole Atlantic region, taking into account also what was happening down in the eastern seaboard. And then we were able to provide that information to the federal government very quickly so that they can start working on programs for us. Provincially, we started meeting very quickly with Finance PEI, who holds around a little bit over 55% of all the loan portfolios for the fishers in this island. Somewhere over close to $100 million, and also having conversations with our charter banks and the credit unions because some of them, they hold the bulk, that remaining 40% of the loans. So we started talking about how our programs, we could tailor our programs to the needs of the public. And what we've done there is in the provincial side, is we've deferred loans, principal and interest, in some cases up to 18 months. And we've provided them loans that fishers can tap into to help them weather the storm. But then they also can, of course, apply into some of the job grant programs for through rural development. A business can apply to them programs. We didn't see a very large uptake on that, but at least businesses or fishers were engaged with the department very quickly on how their businesses would be impacted. And the big question was whether we were not going to have a fishing season this year. Mm-hmm. In the wild oystery, we worked with them as a department very quickly. And they were able to get their membership up from a little bit over 100 to over close to 300. So talking with them, do we have to have a soft shell or a hard shell clam industry this year? And they've actually gone through one delay. They've asked for a second delay that's been granted. And so we have no fishery this year as it applies to aquaculture right now because there is no market. Yeah. There's no market. The restaurants aren't open, so it's hard to get the oysters in there. But we have to acknowledge that we do have fish farms out there on the aquaculture side, like mussels and oysters, that still have to be tended. So we must make sure that these cages are flipped and turned, and the product is still growing, and then also restocking of mussels and so on. But I can tell you that industry is starting to come up a little bit as restaurants open. Of course, the inquiries into what happens. So with all of that, we were able to put a lot of information before the federal government, and they come up with programs also to help us. So we developed 2 programs provincially to help our aquaculture industry and our fishery. And then the federal government, they also announced 2 programs to help the fishers too. And it was on the EI. EI is a big thing to make sure that the fishers have their EI going forward and the crews have their EI. So we were able to win that. And then also provide a loss of income based on a $10,000 grant, which also based on sales of product going to the market. So between the bunch of us, we were able to come up with good programs both provincially and federally, and that I think we're in a good spot. One thing that does concern me is losing of markets. That's something that plays heavy on my mind, because I know that if I can't provide a product into the marketplace, then Ernie's going to jump at the chance to get his product into the marketplace. And I'll pick on you there, Ernie, but that's the way the fishery is. It's like any commodity, any product. If I can't buy toilet paper from A, I'm going to buy it from B, and it's simple. But in a nutshell, that's where we're at fishery globally. You said about the Municipal Governments Act. Some municipalities have signaled to us that they've had some extra expenses. We are looking at that and having them conversations with them. But we won't know until it's all over what the total impact is. But in some cases, there was savings also, right? Because services weren't put out there. We had, you got to look at the world gas market. The last time we haven't seen gas at these prices or diesel at these prices for a long while. Trucks are not on the road, so we're saving money there. We're hearing that too. Everything plays into it.
Absolutely. That's interesting. Have you had much feedback on the fish processing or the aquaculture processing plants? Have they been able to get staff and through some of the programming that's been available, whether students or?
Yeah, good point. One thing we signaled very much at the very start of this back 2 months ago was working with industry and myself and the Shellfish Association with the PEIFA and the processors and the buyers, we were talking weekly. And I can say that I'm very impressed with the way how industry has worked together to bring in measures for COVID-19. That encompasses the harbor authorities and how they could put safe practice, measures in place for self-distancing. And there were some programs that were announced on the federal government side too that helped plants and processors that they could actually have in let's say distance. Some plants were less affected than others. because of the amount of technology and mechanicalization that they've done in plants. So it was challenging to some, but we believe that industry has really come up to the plate or stepped up to the plate and done that type of, safety measures putting in place.
Good. With the lobster fisheries open and that well underway now for a week or more, there's some of the questions that have been submitted came from that industry. One of them is, how are the lobster fishers responding to the one claw rule, and are they required to throw them back in the water?
That was an industry-driven measure that they put in place. It helps with labor. So I haven't heard where it's not a good thing. I have heard that it's actually produced a side market where some fishers are actually taking them one claws and they're not going into processing, but they're going out to the peddlers and buyers at the parking lots. And I'm hearing that. They're selling them at a reduced cost, but at least it's a value added, or that they are trying to move that product. So that's a little bit of an innovative way to move product also aside the buyers.
Awesome. That's a great segue to this question. Have the lobster markets been affected in any way, or is it pretty much business as usual?
There's a very carefully pointed answer question coming up here. Of course, the markets have been affected. That's as restaurants shut down and cruise ships shut down. Of course, markets are going to be affected.
Yes.
But I think that but I'm optimistic. As restaurants, prices are not too bad, and we have a very good product that the world wants. And them inquiries are coming in, and talking with processors and industry, they're still getting the phone calls that people want PEI lobster, and I think that's a very good signal to the world. I think that our reputation as a world-class fishery producer when it comes to lobster is helping us. Per se, I can tell you that catches are strong.
Good.
I can tell you that the industry are working with the fishers on the wharves to make sure that they have the best product available for the marketplace, and I'm pleased with the way things are going.
That's good. Couple more questions. And I think you answered this. The Fish Harvesters Benefit Program, the federal one, will provide non-repayable support of up to $10,000 for self-employed fish harvesters with a valid fishing license. The question, how many fish harvesters have a valid fishing license in PEI?
I believe there's close to over 1,500. If I guess it, I think it's somewhere over 1,500. When you include all the lobster buyers or lobster harvesters across PEI. But any fisher can apply for that $10,000 grant to the federal government, and of course they can also apply to our programs too. There are some requirements in there based on catch, and you have to prove your income's down and prove your catch is down. And so on, or measures that were put in place that actually limit your fishery, and they could be based on a boat quota and stuff like that. So, of course, if last year you were able to bring in all the lobster you want, and this year there's actually boat quotas, well, then of course your gross income or your money coming in is going to be less than the year before. So, but the prices are staying good with that, and I think that if anything, what we should see is a trend upward in prices as things come back online and people start asking for our PEI lobster. One thing I've said to our provincial counterparts and the federal government has adopted is I would like to see us move to a very aggressive domestic marketing campaign, and we're working on that with the federal government. That was a PEI-born solution that I'm very proud of. And I think that we need to do that. And we've actually got some interesting things we're working on in the department. We'll be rolling out in the next little bit to produce, to getting our market, getting our more information out there to the domestic market.
And don't forget that the PEI chambers have a substantial distribution network as well. And, we're happy to help and distribute that message.
Yeah.
We can do. right across the country.
Yeah.
The other follow-up piece to this question, and I'm not sure if you're going to be able to answer it, was how many fishers don't have a license?
Well, first of all, you can't fish without a license. It's plain and
What I
simple
was
as
thinking,
that.
but it's on the paper, so I thought I'd ask.
Yeah, no. It was actually funny. I had a phone call from on the weekend of a guy saying, "How can I get a fishing license?" I said, "What do you need a fishing license?" He said, "Well, I want to fish lobster." And I took a laugh and I said, "Well, first of all, you got to find somebody who wants to sell you, because there's a moratorium on new fishing licenses that are out there, and unless you find somebody that's got a license that wants to sell it, it's not going to happen."
That's interesting. Another question about the market for oysters. Have most oyster farmers found local Canadian markets for their product?
Well, that's as restaurants shut down, right? Then of course that market's not there. But there is conversations with some processors or buyers that are actually talking about shipping their product to your door.
Okay.
I can tell you that's something that I'm working on. We're actually having that conversation with a couple of companies of how we could make that happen.
Interesting.
And basically, I'm thinking, wouldn't it be some nice to open your door and have a guy standing there with a box of lobster from UPS or Midland Transport or somebody? So I think there's very creative ways. I think we have to look what other people have done. Amazon, apparently their sales are way up. Look what restaurants have done in home deliveries. Look what just different people have done to get their product from the local residents, the local shop to somebody's door here in PEI. And I think we need to be very creative when it comes to stuff like that.
I agree. The second part of that question is there a possibility for the oyster fishers to use the same markets as the lobster fishers and sell internationally to Europe?
And that is happening. Talking to processors and the farmers, their markets in them European countries and internationally have not actually decreased. Nobody's actually canceled a sale, which is good. So of course, I think as you see restaurants opening up across the world market, you'll see that back up. I can tell you that there is a little bit of a shortage in some products, which should signal to the world that they might have to pay a little bit more money.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see how the markets respond as we all start to move out of the isolation phase and start to open things up a little bit. I think there'll be price changes in several markets that will be as a result of this pandemic. Another question about the oyster fisheries. I don't know why I'm struggling with, have most growers decided to leave the oysters in the water for another year? Thank you.
One thing, the aquaculture industry basically is, in some cases, the wild oyster, there's no market right now, and there's very little market for the clam industry. So one thing I want to do is, how do we look at an enhanced water, how would you say it? I want to do more work on the water. Maybe this is the year where we enhance our beds and we improve what we're doing by technology on the water. I'm actually talking to a company about how we can move renewable energy to oyster boats and stuff like that. How can we look at technology that this year maybe to upgrade our equipment and to help with our water quality and improve our beds by an enhanced seeding project. We're having that conversation with the federal government. This might be the year where we do a major look at getting our fishers involved in actually the whole technology side of things and the water quality and the beds and all that kind of stuff. So we're looking at that.
It's fantastic. And it follows into the next part of that question. Are there any hazards associated with letting them grow bigger?
That's a touchy question, because I can tell you in the Japanese market that they want a certain oyster. They want a certain oyster with a certain look. And I can tell you that in parts of Japan, there are oysters from PEI that are going for $9.99 US.
Wow.
So, you know, that's a specific oyster with a specific look and so on. So, you know, we have to be very careful of course, size and what that, you know, what that could do to a market that's looking for a specific look, right? So it's something
Market
that,
driven.
yeah, you know, you're talking about a living organism here. You're talking about a living species, so you have to be very careful.
Last question on the list from the questions that were submitted. Do you have a comparison of what lobster catch has been to date this year compared to last year?
Last year we had a record-setting year. I can tell you that. This year, I'll just go as far as saying catches are very strong.
Very good. Thank you. That's the end of my questions. I do have a quick question that was submitted to me via email. One of my colleagues asked if you know if any of the municipalities have been seeking the $2,500 business adaptation, what's it called? The BAA fund for working through strategies if they've been affected by COVID?
Not that I'm aware of. They haven't applied. That they would fall under finance PEI or not finance PEI, innovation and growth that would fall under that. So it'd be under Mr. Matt McKay's where they would apply for that.
Okay.
But I haven't personally been asked that question.
Okay. Awesome. That's the end of the questions and information that I've been provided with. And I don't think we have a whole lot of we don't have any other questions submitted. So the person that asked about the electrical rates has clarified a little bit by saying other provinces have gone to off-peak rates during COVID-19.
Okay, so if that were, there would have to be an application made by the rate holders or by the utility into IRAC, and I don't believe that I follow IRAC pretty closely, and I have not seen any application into IRAC to approve a rate that type of move, because any rate, anything that affects rates has to be approved by IRAC, or any changes to any rates that are in place have to go through IRAC.
Awesome. With the end of this, is there anything either of you would like to add to the conversation or finish with?
Go ahead, Ernie.
Yeah, just again, Pam, thank you to both the Summerside and the West Prince Chamber of Commerce for the invitation to participate this morning. You know, as both of us, Minister Fox and myself have outlined, there's certainly a number of programs out there. I think one of the challenges that the islanders have had probably is just navigating information to find out what program may or may not be there but can benefit them. So I think it's important that if they do have questions, feel free to reach out to any of our MLAs right across the province, and do our best to help them navigate the system, if you like, and to point them in the right direction. And just again, it's been one of the things that's really hit home with me over this 8-10 week period is how great it is to be an islander, that everybody's there for each other, is long and the short. So again, thank you, and have a great day. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Mr. Fox?
Yeah. Thank you, Pam. Really appreciation to the actual two chambers, West Prince and Summerside, holding these. I think it's a sign of the new way to do business, and keep everybody in the loop. And one thing everybody knows, like I believe in small business, and I think anything that the chambers can do to promote buying local and to assisting small businesses in getting their goods to, you know, the person's door is a positive thing. And like, I think we've seen the best in people. You know, I'm going to say it. I'm going to come out and say it. There was some comments made against some people that are doing the best job possible, and I think that was wrong. I'll give full marks to Dr. Heather Morrison and her crew and what she's provided to this province over the last 9 weeks to 10 weeks. And I can say that you know, I'm very confident in the crew that I work with Ernie and the Premier and our other cabinet ministers. You know, it's long, tiring days. And some days, Ernie, and you would know, like there was cabinet, we were sitting, cabinet was meeting every day consistently for over close to 50 some days, Monday to Sunday. And it was for the best of Islanders. And I think that Islanders have really shown the best that they are in how they've supported each other and how local businesses have to support each other. So hats off to the province of Prince Edward Island and everybody who's involved.
Thank you, Minister Fox. It has been a challenging time, and it's good of you to say that, Dr. Morrison and Premier and all of you, all our public servants and our essential workers have contributed greatly to help us get through this. Thank you so much for all of it. I have a little note to all panelists. It says, thank you for speaking to us today. The large majority of Islanders support and are grateful to Dr. Morrison and her team. And I think the majority of Islanders feel that way. It has been challenging, and you know, I think with the longer it's gone on, I think maybe some of the stress causing some fissures and some cracks in people's resolve. So hopefully, you know, as things open up, people will see the light at the end of the tunnel. Thank you so much both for participating today. That both chambers appreciate your time and your contributions and sharing your information and your observations through this challenging period with us. We from the chambers will continue to do our best to advocate and advertise and promote local business. Thanks so much and have a great week.
Thank you.
Okay, have a good day. Thank you very much.
Take care.